Welcome to Season 3 of Maritime SoftwareHub, the People Podcast. My name is Callum Beaumont, the founder of Callum Beaumont, which is the digital shipping recruitment agency that powers the show. Today, I'm really excited to be joined by Nick Chubb. He's the founder of Thetius, a very well-known research advisory business, specifically in the maritime technology space. I'm a big fan of all their kind of reports and analytics. And generally, they're kind of just press that goes on in the market with updates. So this discussion, we're going to dive into Nick's view of the industry trends, perhaps in 2023, and also looking now into 2024. In particular, we're going to have a look at the EU ETS that's happening now, and also how businesses are kind of preparing to provide their reports and analytics around the carbon emissions. We're going to have a look at his advice for businesses that are either thinking about going through a digital transformation or about to go through one. And we're going to have a little discussion about just general kind of trends across the maritime tech space. So I hope you enjoy. Thank you again for tuning in and your support, and we look forward to talking soon. Hi Nick, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Callum. Really appreciate you inviting me on.
No, it's a pleasure. I mean, I mentioned I've met a couple of the team over the last couple of years through some different events. I think it might have been the Smart Maritime Network event we went to, and we met a few guys. So great to speak to you. Well, I mean, obviously, I've done a little bit of an intro, but I'd love to hear a bit more from your side, a bit about you, and obviously kind of what Thetius do as a business, if that's all right.
Yeah, sure. So I'm the founder of Thetius. We are a research firm that exists to support maritime industry leaders working across ship operations, ports and terminals, and chartering to make better technology decisions. So our kind of long-term aim is to become the research partner of choice for any kind of leader or any kind of decision maker who wants to support safer, more sustainable, and more profitable maritime operations. And the way that we work is that we provide research, access to new ideas, and a network, peer network that is all geared to help them make better technology decisions quickly and with confidence.
Well, I also noticed that you've got a degree in nautical science yourself, so that must help a little bit, obviously, with your kind of advisory sort of research projects and things.
Yeah, so I'm by trade, I'm a seafarer. So I used to be a deck officer. I went to sea at 19. And that's kind of how I started in the industry. Realised that I didn't want to do a full career at sea, so came ashore after 4 years, and then started working actually in the technology sector outside of maritime. And I saw all of this cool stuff going on, and this is a few years ago now, but started to ask the question of why is none of this happening in the maritime sector. Thankfully, that's no longer the case. There's a kind of thriving maritime technology scene. But certainly for the few years before I started Thetius, I was working a lot, either working with established, very traditional maritime businesses, sort of helping them get better at using technology, or working for startups and tech companies that were trying to launch into the maritime space. And really found that there's this huge gap where there's a huge amount of information, a huge amount of companies joining the sector, quite a lot of confusion and misinformation about what particular technologies do. And so we kind of felt that there was an opportunity to create a platform that unpicks all of that and makes decision making easier. And that's sort of where Thetius came about.
Are you mainly speaking to kind of ship owners, or do you also speak to charterers, brokers, and anyone kind of shipping related?
Yeah, so we work, I guess, with three core areas. So what we call industry operators. So that is ship owners, managers, those who are actually operating the vessel, involved in the technical day-to-day management of the vessel. We also work with ports and terminals, and then finally we work with charterers and anyone involved in the kind of voyage management space. Those are the operators that we work with. But we work directly with technology companies as well, sort of helping them put their strategy together, how they're going to compete in a particular market, how they're going to serve their customers. And we work with investors, finally. There's a lot of investors looking at this space, but it's a space that requires quite specialist knowledge, I would say. And most of our team come from an operating background, so they've either worked on ships, they've worked in ports, they kind of understand how the industry works, which just helps us put together better research than those who haven't got the experience.
I really enjoy reading your reports, and particularly your sort of the different technology market maps and that type of thing for our recruitment point of view and kind of knowledge of the sector. It's really valuable. So yeah, always kind of pleased to see them. And so do you also kind of, would you say B2C is a big part of your business, or is it mainly kind of B2B in general?
Yeah, so we're a fully B2B focused research business. So our real kind of core aim in terms of who we work with are either, if we're looking at those kind of industry operators, they've usually got quite large fleets, or it's a large port terminal operation, and they're wanting to actually set what their technology strategy should be for the next 3 years, and then be able to execute on it. And that's kind of where our research really comes into its own, is helping you understand the big picture, and then understanding what to do about it, and kind of start the journey.
Great. And you've got obviously a team of analysts and researchers, I imagine, kind of all keeping on top of different trends and things. And I probably may not have to share this if you don't want to, but how are you kind of getting your kind of information and source? Is it through kind of communication with clients and customers and just general market intel?
Yeah, so there's 3 ways. So first is that we have developed a platform that monitors media and social media. So anytime that something is announced, like a startup raises funds, or a tech company starts working with a shipping company, or perhaps there's some M&A activity, a company's acquired, or companies emerging, we pick that up through that system. We then have a team of analysts, as I say, who all have operating experience in the industry, who review that information, tag it up correctly. We have some AI that helps us triage it and helps us generate content to go into our database, and then we pull all of that into a huge database. So we're actively tracking now 4,000, something like that, just over 4,000 suppliers who are working in the maritime technology space, and we have all of that accessible to clients in a sort of database format. The second way that we get information for that is suppliers come to us directly, because our clients are large shipping companies, large charterers, large ports terminals. There's quite a lot of benefit to us having up-to-date information about what technology companies do, how they do it, and who they're working with, so that they can then be featured in our reports. And our reports, we've grown a bit of an audience now. So our last Thetius 150 for 2023, I think has been seen now by something like 30,000 people. The one before that in 22 was 49,000 people, I think, before we put out the new one. So they get seen quite far and wide. So we have a lot of technology companies just come to us and provide us some of that data. And then the third, and probably the most valuable thing that we do, is that we have a rolling program of interviews with industry decision makers. So if someone is making technology decisions within the industry, at some point one of our analysts will knock on the door and ask if they'll share an opinion, and so we get to understand really, what are the decision makers thinking in terms of what keeps them up at night, what suppliers are they working with, who's done a good job, who's done a bad job, and that helps us. Piecing those 3 data sets together helps us to build up a really clear picture of what works and what doesn't across the industry.
Something. I also sort of, you recently made a bit of a post, I think it was in the last year, about kind of the focus of the business and things. So do you want to tell us a little bit more about that, and perhaps maybe about your individual role at Thetius?
Yeah, sure. So when I started the company, it was just me and a laptop, and we grew. We were really lucky and very fortunate to grow through COVID, and so we came out the other side of that with a bit of a team in place. And I spent probably the last year, spending nearly all of my time sort of internally looking at the team, looking at how our processes are working, all of that sort of stuff, kind of running the day-to-day operations. And what gave us that kind of early growth was actually me doing things like this, having the time to be able to go on a podcast, or go and speak at an event, or be able to write stuff that isn't just strictly going into our research. And so really felt that there are other people in the business as well who are better at that day-to-day management stuff. So my business partner David has been running businesses for much longer than I have, and so really we just kind of sat down and looked at what are our growth plans for the next 3 years and how are we going to do them, how are we going to achieve it, and ultimately what we decided we want to do is one is focus. When we first started, we were quite a broad consultancy. We were doing all sorts of different things, all related to maritime technology. Going forward, we're exclusively focusing on producing great research that supports decision making. And then two is actually just identifying who in the business should be doing what. And I realised that I'm not the best person to be doing the day-to-day management, and so I passed that on to David, who's become a managing director. I'm moving into have moved now into a strategy role, and really my main focus now is what is our long-term strategy and how do we actually make sure that happens, and then two is actually spending as much time as possible advocating for the business and talking about what's going on in the maritime technology sector, and ideally that will help educate the industry, but also give us a bit of a platform as a business too.
Great. I'm really excited to see how that evolves, and obviously I'm a big fan. I keep messaging all the time when you put some reports out and stuff, so it's really helpful for us, our point of view as well. Awesome.
That's great to hear.
No, you're very welcome. I mean, some of the companies you've featured in the last couple of years, we've kind of, you may have noticed, we've had on the podcast and everything, and so it's nice to see the connection, and they're getting recognised as well as they grow. Companies like Tiller and Tenure and obviously a number of others, but some really interesting kind of more startup businesses that maybe aren't as prominent over here in the kind of, I guess, Europe at the moment. So yeah, good to see them being focused and sort of showcased. This episode is proudly sponsored by Vortexa. Vortexa provides market-leading real-time data and advanced analytics, offering comprehensive global information on energy and freight markets, including energy flows, freight, and inventories. Vortexa strive to connect and optimize energy flows by combining pioneering technology with industry expertise. If you would like to learn more about Vortexa's innovative platform, you can visit www.vortexa.com. Cool. So what I thought we'd talk about mainly today, and we'll dive into a couple of subjects, but it's predominantly about kind of the key industry trends within the maritime technology space. Obviously, new start of the year, we just had the EU ETS kind of regulations and everything going live. So from your point of view, I'm sure you're seeing lots of different kind of key things happening at the moment, but is there anything that stands out as perhaps, maybe if we look back at the last 12 months and think, okay, that sort of was quite a dramatic shift last year, what do we think is going to happen this year perhaps?
Yeah, great question. So I would say you've touched on EU ETS. I think that's through the last quarter of 23, we just saw a flurry of different product announcements. Near enough, anyone who's vaguely involved in either, even companies that are involved in technical management, but anyone who's vaguely involved in voyage management has launched some kind of ETS product or an ETS module.
Well,
and I think that's. I think the industry generally is actually quite good at adapting to those kinds of changes. If you take, for example, the sulfur cap coming into 2020, everyone was sort of in a bit of a panic in the last quarter of 2019, and then the sulfur cap came in, and it was actually almost a bit of a non-event. I think EU ETS could be similar in that the software is near enough now in place. A lot of the authorities that are supposed to be collecting these charges haven't yet got themselves in a situation where they've got all of their infrastructure in place. So I don't think we'll see any real impact of EU ETS, even though the measuring, if you like, is happening from the 1st of January, any real impact until the latter half of the year. But I do think it marks an important shift in that this is the first time that there is any kind of market-based measure for carbon in the industry, and that is a big shift and something I think we'll see more of. All of a sudden, decarbonisation goes from a nice to have for your ESG reporting and your ESG goals to a genuine dollars and cents requirement. And so all of the optimization technologies that perhaps we've seen interestingly, in the last year or so, take a bit of a back seat to alternative fuels. I think maybe will come to the fore a little bit because there's a genuine, or at least I should say, a much more pronounced financial saving for reducing or improving the ton mile efficiency of a ship. I think the other major one, and this is not, there'll be no surprises here, but we are getting to the point where there will need to be some decisions and commitments made in alternative fuels. A lot of that is outside of the industry's hands. We're really going back to energy majors and landside infrastructure providers in terms of what their strategy is going to be. What are they going to build? I don't see us getting to a point where there will be a dominant global alternative fuel. I think we're going to be in a situation perhaps in 10, 15 years where there is a multitude of fuels, including some fossil fuels, including things like methanol, including ammonia in certain trade lanes, including hydrogen and electric on sort of short sea and coastal routes. So as the industry sort of gears up for what that future fuel pathway looks like, there's some very, very difficult decisions that need to be made in the next 12 months because that will impact what the fleet looks like in 20 years' time. So it's a difficult. I think it's going to be a difficult year for anyone involved in that question. Then the other one that perhaps has been talked about a lot, so we don't need to spend a huge amount of time on it. But I would say, personally, I don't think it's overhyped, and I think there's a lot of people now starting to say it's overhyped, and that's AI. 2023 was kind of the year of ChatGPT, and I think we're going to see more of that through 2024. There will be endless talk about it, and there will absolutely be AI fatigue. But the way that OpenAI and Microsoft and the way that partnership's put together is that they've got a genuinely transformative technology, and they're combining that with Microsoft's distribution. Near enough every customer we have is Microsoft in some way, and so you expect to see GPT of some sort in near enough every software product you use in the next 12 months. And I think that will change a lot of how people behind desks operate their businesses across the industry, which is kind of interesting because everyone kind of gets excited about AI having an impact on autonomous and unmanned vessels, but the real impact is going to be ashore.
That was going to link to my next question. I was going to say about the autonomous vessel side. Do you think the spotlight's come off a little bit on that recently, or is there still lots of investment going into advancements in that area?
Yeah, there's still a lot of investment in the space. I mean, all three of the major Japanese carriers have put very openly in their strategies in the last few years that they are pursuing manned autonomy. So kind of recognizing that there is a bit of a demographic crunch on large vessels. There just aren't enough officers and senior officers to crew the number of large vessels we think we're going to need over the next 20, 30 years. We're looking at how do we go, or we're not, but a lot of ship owners are looking at how do we go from a bit like we have unmanned machinery spaces in engine rooms. How can we move to perhaps an unmanned bridge where you've still got crew on board, you've still got qualified, competent crew who can take over if needed, but things like ocean passages. I've sailed over the Atlantic quite a few times, and we once did it without touching the autopilot once because there was just no need to. We didn't see any other traffic. If you can take that kind of watchkeeping side of it and the lookout side of it and make it fully autonomous, that actually frees up people to be able to do other things on board, like maintaining the ship better. Long term, potentially that allows you to reduce the crew size, although that is, I think, some way off. So that's absolutely still happening. It's just much less talked about now because everyone's kind of moved on to the next big thing. But and Japan's just kind of one example. All through Europe and the Nordics, there's a huge amount of work going on in the autonomy space. The UK has become a little bit of an autonomy hub, but mainly focused around small vessels. And the east coast of the US as well, sort of Boston, Massachusetts around there is become a bit of a small vessel autonomy hub. So there's lots going on. It just isn't as talked about in kind of maritime media at the moment. Yeah,
maybe it's more talked about in regions like Norway, Germany. I see quite a lot of like Kongsberg, Wärtsilä, those guys doing a lot more in that area. But also another thing I know you've been sort of commenting on as well is about the consolidation that's happened, especially the last sort of 12, 18 months or so. Do you think there'll be an increase in that this year, or do you think kind of it sort of might stabilize a little bit now?
Yeah, I think it's just part of the dynamics of the industry generally. It's not, maritime is not like, and selling to ship owners in particular is not like other B2B industrial sectors. And so oftentimes what happens is a VC fund will come in, chuck some money behind, a cool tech startup who's got a good idea and some level of product market fit, expecting to see the kind of numbers that you get in other B2B sectors, and they don't materialize because it just takes a long time to sell into this industry. Often this software is mission critical, and that makes it very, very sticky. It makes it very hard to move from one piece, one software suite to another. If you're running 20,000 crew or you're running 150 ships, switching over your procurement system is a huge task and takes 18 months, 2 years, and costs a lot of money to do. So it's not something that anyone will take lightly. Therefore, it's difficult to kind of do the traditional VC growth path. And I think that's where a lot of the consolidation has come from, is actually the ability to grow market share by acquiring another company that has, you've got 5,000 vessels, the other company has 5,000 vessels. You acquire them or you merge together, and all of a sudden you've got something with 10,000 vessels. That's all of a sudden quite a chunky share of the market. I think we're going to see more of that. I think we're only really at the beginning of that phase, and I think the exit route for a lot of startups who want to be acquired in this space is going to be that, rather than sort of going all the way up to IPO. It's a very, very difficult thing to do in this industry.
Yeah, no, that's really, really interesting. When we see, it really impacts the hiring side from recruitment perspective, obviously. I made a little post about it recently about companies, the employees suddenly having maybe different managers, different cultures sort of mixed together, and it can be very difficult. Things like promotion. It can also be great, obviously, if you've suddenly got more scope and a wider kind of network to leverage and things. So, yeah,
it's really difficult to make M&A work. The actual integration part of it. The technological integration is one thing, but the integration of cultures, changes of leadership, integration of branding, all of that, I think, gets massively underestimated. And so, a lot of kind of M&A platforms that come into this space, I think, underestimate that, and a lot of the synergies that they think they're going to get don't actually materialize. So it's not always the best way to grow, but it's definitely the fastest way to grow in this market. Okay,
so another little area we're talking about, if any companies or just in general when you're speaking to clients and they're looking at trying to digitalize their systems, is there a sort of a rough, and that's a very big subject, lots of variables, but any type of rough advice you might be able to give to companies that are trying to digitize some of their kind of vessel operation systems or any specific type of systems?
Yeah, I think a lot of the time companies get swept up in the narrative of this technology is really exciting. We should therefore pursue it, or our competitors have gone for another technology and we should look at that. And I think the most important thing to do before even thinking about your digital strategy is just making sure the organization has an overall strategy and a very clear direction of where you're going for the next 3 to 5 years. Then you can look at how to use technology to support that strategy. I think very often we get excited by the technology and then try and sort of shoehorn it into or sort of build a strategy around it, and that doesn't necessarily work. So have an overall technology agnostic strategy and a very clear direction for the organization, and then look at the technology underneath it. I think that makes a lot more sense. And then when you're looking at that technology, I would kind of split it into two key questions that you want to be asking yourselves that really get answered by that overall direction you're taking. The first question is, do we want to be on the cutting edge of this technology, or do we want to be a fast follower? And then the second question is, do we want to build this technology in-house, or do we want to just buy it from someone? And I think depending on the answers to those questions, you can then kind of set a strategy for how you're going to go about it. So if you take AI, for example, if you want to be on the cutting edge and you want to build it, then actually what you need to do is just look at how you're going to build a team. That becomes a question of who, not how. And how do you make sure you've got the right leadership with the right knowledge and skills to be able to execute on that strategy? How are you going to build out the right competencies and build out a team with enough horsepower to be able to build out some kind of AI capability? If you want to buy that, then you need to know, well, who are the vendors in the market that are actually at the cutting edge, and how can you approach working with them? Similarly, if you want to be a fast follower, you need to have a good understanding of what your competitors are doing, what technologies are out there, and who they're working with to get those kind of results. So your strategy really depends on, and you can have that kind of question, you can ask those questions over and over again for lots of different technologies, looking at how they fit into your overall strategy. And that can kind of give you an understanding of where you need to put resources. Is it into your people? Is it into partnerships with vendors? In reality, it's some combination of both. But how much you pull each of those levers will depend on that kind of, again, that first pillar, right, which is the overall strategy.
And people that typically decide that strategy, are you mainly speaking to stakeholders like CEOs, the C-suite, or other types of individuals?
Yeah, so obviously it does vary from organisation to organisation, but I would say something as important as digital and technology really needs to come from the top. And so obviously the overall strategy should come from the top. But we spend a lot of our time speaking with CEOs, CTOs, CIOs to really get an understanding of where the organisation's going from a technological standpoint. But I would say, just in terms of general advice, when we go out and speak to our clients, we often find a huge disconnect and a huge gulf between what the C-suite believe is happening and then what the people on the ground are actually doing, or the experience that the team on the ground actually has. And so I do think it's important to bring in a wide range of voices from across an organisation when you're looking at those sorts of questions. But at some point, someone's got to make a decision on where you're going, and that requires total buy-in from the top.
Do you see many on the client side, let's say from ship owner or ship operators, hiring internal kind of like app support managers or implementation managers? Is that growing from what you can see from your side? I know we are seeing a bit from our side, but just wondered from your perspective.
Yeah, it kind of used to be, there used to be an IT department, and then and that was really, has everyone got a computer? My keyboard's broken. Kind of getting all that kind of very basic infrastructure in place for people. And then it kind of became about, sort of building out server capabilities and all that sort of stuff, but still very focused on infrastructure. And then, someone came along and said, well, maybe we should have digital transformation teams who are much more outward looking, future looking. That all became quite, popular over the last few years, but it really kind of died off, I would say, in favour of a kind of technology and digital team that has some combination of the right infrastructure, although a lot of it's moving out to the cloud. But then also teams that perhaps can do things like rapid API development. There was I would say the thinking has evolved from, we should have a supplier that will do everything for us. So, for example, all our technical management. Increasingly, so many startups have come onto the scene that have good products, that now it's a case of, we need to have a platform that might be our ERP, but then actually what are the kind of best-in-class solutions that we can tie into that? And, therefore, having a team that understands how APIs work, or perhaps operations team members that understand enough about technology to be able to use low-code and no-code tools. We're starting to see that kind of shift, which is quite exciting, because I think it creates a lot of opportunity for innovation within even within a very large, complex shipping company.
It's interesting. What type of backgrounds do you think those people might have that are kind of in those roles internally, do you think?
It's a good question. we still see a huge number of master mariner, chief officer, chief engineers who've kind of moved ashore, often gone into superintendency or something like that, and then really more by interest than formal training have moved over to the digital side. Personally, I'd love to see someone, create like a sort of coding boot camp for seafarers or people with in-depth industry expertise, because I think there's a huge amount of untapped potential that we have across the industry just through a lack of the right kind of digital talent or digital skills. But equally, we see a lot of people who come from a more sort of traditional, if you like, IT background, and they come from another large industrial sector or an enterprise IT department and sort of been parachuted into shipping. And it's always interesting to hear, the difference between someone who's come from the IT background or the shipping background. Ultimately, I think it's a good idea to have a bit of both in that.
Yeah, especially, and kind of from the SaaS background as well. If it's a SaaS sort of model where it might be slightly more Americanized and they're used to different sales methodologies, that type of thing. We see a lot of people kind of go into roles that are either from traditional maritime, and sometimes there's a bit of a misalignment if, in particular, they've been kind of they've got that backing from a VC type of thing, and it may not be quite the right fit. So it's interesting to learn a bit about who is behind the company when you join businesses and things, understand the culture.
I think that's a really interesting point, and I think that's something, if you're looking at joining a maritime tech company, is to look at, yes, you're right, not just the founding team, although I think that's important. And I would say, I think there are a lot of founders who've come into the industry cold and done well, so it's not necessarily an indicator, but I would say those founders who come into the industry with, a decade, 2 decades of in-depth operating experience, I think tend to do better, or at least there's perhaps less risk there. And then also the investors who are involved as well. I think where you've got you call it smart capital, I guess, but effectively the solution has been backed in some way by industry operators who are owning ships, operating ships, owning and operating ports, chartering ships, whatever it may be. I think is a really strong indicator that there's something really good there, because generally speaking, this industry is not a silly industry. If something doesn't work, it won't be used, and those investors who are actually in the arena, if you like, understand that really well, and so it's a helpful indicator of what's good and what's not.
Awesome. All right. Well, just to sort of wrap things up a little bit, just a quick question: if someone was thinking about perhaps either joining your team or just generally interested in kind of pursuing a career within kind of research and kind of advisory, what are some of the kind of the key kind of traits they might need and key skills, would you say?
That's a really good question. I guess first point to say is that we're currently hiring, and we're generally always on the lookout for talented people. So if you are interested in joining Thetius, give myself or another member of the team a shout. We do publish when we're hiring on our website as well. So I think we've got a couple of active roles at the moment. I'd say the number one trait, if you want to work in research specifically, the most important trait, I would say, is curiosity. I wouldn't say necessarily that there are hard skills that anyone should come in with. I think it helps if someone enjoys and has done some writing, because often 9 times out of 10 what we're producing is written communication. I would say everything near enough. It also helps to have a bit of industry experience, or at least sort of demonstrable interest in the industry. But I would say the most important trait is curiosity. I think if you can ask that question of why, not just once or twice, but 3, 4, 5 times, to really sort of get to the bottom of an issue, and look at things in a very dispassionate way, but always be trying to get down to the next level of understanding, then you're going to do well in a research role. And I would say, two other things. One is, and this is just helpful advice, I think, for anyone, and it's really hard to do. And the further you go in your career, the more you realise that it's very, very rare to find people who do actually do this. But just do the things you say you're going to do when you say you're going to do them. And this is something I'm happy to admit I'm terrible at. That is a genuine superpower for your career. If you say you're going to do something at a certain time and that it gets done, then over time people will trust you more and more and more, and you'll be handed more and more responsibility. I think that's super important. And then this is an industry that long term thinking is really helpful. So I would say, just be very, very honest, even when it costs you in the short term. We've run research projects in the past where we've had to go in and give a leadership team answers or insight that they really didn't want. And often there's a perception of research firms coming in and being used to effectively rubber stamp the CEO's strategy. Often, we've come in and said to clients, actually, we really don't think you should pursue this. Whatever this may be, which in the short term, maybe costs you because you lose out on all the extra, potential work to actually help with implementing something. But in the long term, I think that's how you build a strong reputation, and that's certainly something that we're trying to do. So even if it's uncomfortable or if it's going to cost you in the short term, just always be honest and give the answers that you genuinely believe are true.
No, I completely agree. You guys have an awesome kind of name in our space, and I know we're kind of both in the same arenas, which is really interesting. So I really appreciate all your time and the insights you've shared. One last question I'd like to ask everyone before they leave. Anything you like to do in particular in your spare time, as far as like hobbies, that type of thing?
Yeah, I mean, I have an 18-month-old daughter, so between her and running a business, there's not a huge amount of time left over. But I do, when I do get the time, I fly paragliders, which is something I started learning a few years ago.
Amazing.
Really, really good fun, and a great way to. You have to really concentrate on it because the stakes can be quite high. So it's a really great way to kind of just get yourself totally out of your own head, not think about work, not think about anything else, just think about what's in front of you. I'd absolutely recommend it as a hobby to anyone who's vaguely interested in flying. It's awesome.
Fantastic. Yeah, we live quite near, I think I mentioned earlier, to Headcorn Aerodrome. So we see quite a lot of the paragliders and the little sort of pilots and things flying around above our house quite regularly. So never done it. I've done skydiving, but I've never done that before. So that's pretty awesome.
It's I would definitely recommend. And actually, around you, there's lots of the South Downs. It's not too far to drive. Lots of amazing spots there.
Great. Okay, cool. And for the best way, if anyone wants to reach out to you and the Thetius team about any questions at all, what's the best way for them to do so?
So if you want to know what we're doing and kind of keep up with us, if you go to our website, thetius.com, at some point there'll either be a pop-up or a button to push or something. You'll be invited to subscribe to our newsletter. We send a brief technology brief out every Tuesday that people often reply to saying they really enjoy. So I would absolutely recommend that, even if you're just vaguely interested in the maritime technology space. We also have a ton of free research. We make a huge, I can't tell you the actual numbers off the top of my head, but a huge amount of research that we do every year, we just make freely available for people. So by all means, have a poke around, have a read. You can download a huge library of reports for free. We also have a free version of Thetius IQ, which is our kind of core intelligence platform. By all means, I'm fairly active on LinkedIn, so by all means, look me up on LinkedIn. I'm just Nick Chubb, or Nick Chubb from Thetius. I'm horrible with LinkedIn Messenger though, so apologies if I don't get back to you straight away. The best thing to do if you want to reach out to me directly is just to email Nick, Nick, at thetius.com.
Great. Well, all right. Well, thank you so much again, and really appreciate all your insights and advice. So thanks for your time, and we'll catch up soon.
Thanks, Callum. Really appreciate the invite to come on.
You're very welcome.